Welcome, witches and wizards, to a deep journey through the most enigmatic corridors of Hogwarts. Today, we're going to unveil the mysteries of the most misunderstood, most feared, and certainly most fascinating house of all at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. We're talking about Slytherin, the house that carries on its shoulders a 1,000-year legacy, full of ambition, cunning, greatness, and yes, shadows too. If you've always wondered what it really means to be part of Slytherin, if you've been curious about the secrets kept in the castle's dungeons, or if you simply want to understand why this house produced some of the most powerful wizards in magical history, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because the next few minutes will completely transform your view of the House of the Serpent. But before we dive into this fascinating story, if you're not subscribed yet, click the subscribe button now, turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Let's create the largest Harry Potter fan community. Leave your like too, it helps the channel grow tremendously. Now yes, let's begin our journey through Hogwarts' most ambitious house. Slytherin's history begins more than 1,000 years ago, in a time when magic was still viewed with fear and distrust by Muggles. Salazar Slytherin was one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts, along with Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Helga Hufflepuff. These 4 extraordinary wizards had a common dream: to create a safe place where young witches and wizards could learn magic away from Muggle persecution. But each founder had their own vision about what kind of students should be taught and how they should be educated. Salazar Slytherin was particularly gifted in Parseltongue, the extremely rare ability to speak to serpents, a characteristic that would be passed down through his family lineage for generations. He was a man of firm principles, ambitious and determined, characteristics he valued above all else in his students. Salazar believed that only pure-blood wizards should have the privilege of learning magic at Hogwarts. He feared that Muggle-born students would be unworthy of trust and could represent a threat to the magical community. This thinking caused great conflicts with the other founders, especially with Godric Gryffindor, who argued that any child with magical abilities should have the opportunity to study, regardless of their origin. The discussions between Salazar and Gryffindor became increasingly intense and bitter. The friendship that once existed between them transformed into rivalry and eventually into deep enmity. Salazar couldn't accept that Muggle-borns would study alongside wizards from traditional families, while Gryffindor saw this stance as prejudiced and contrary to the true values of magic. The conflict reached an unsustainable point. Salazar made the decision to leave the school he himself had helped found. But before departing, he left his permanent mark on Hogwarts. In the depths of the castle, beneath the dungeons, Salazar built a secret chamber that none of the other founders knew about. This chamber would become known in history as the Chamber of Secrets, a legendary place that would generate fear and speculation for centuries. Inside this chamber, Salazar imprisoned a monstrous creature, a basilisk, a gigantic serpent whose direct gaze causes instant death. Salazar's intention was clear and dark. He sealed the chamber in such a way that only his true heir could open it, and when that happened, the basilisk would be freed to purge the school of the Muggle-borns that Salazar so despised. For centuries, the Chamber of Secrets remained closed, becoming more legend than reality. Many Hogwarts headmasters searched for the chamber, but none managed to find it. The very existence of the chamber was questioned by some, considered just a story to frighten students. But the chamber was real, patiently waiting in the castle's depths for the moment when Slytherin's true heir would return. That moment came for the first time in 1942, when a Slytherin student named Tom Riddle discovered the chamber's entrance. Riddle was a Parselmouth, a direct descendant of Salazar Slytherin through the Gaunt family. He opened the chamber and released the basilisk, which resulted in the death of a student named Moaning Myrtle. Riddle blamed Hagrid for the attack, and the chamber was closed again, with its secret preserved. 50 years later, in 1992, the Chamber of Secrets was opened again. This time, it wasn't Tom Riddle who opened it, but a fragment of his teenage soul preserved in a diary. Ginny Weasley, under the influence of the cursed diary, was possessed by Riddle's memory and used to reopen the chamber. Several students were petrified by the basilisk's eyes reflected in surfaces, including Hermione Granger, Colin Creevey, and others. Harry Potter, revealing himself also to be a Parselmouth, managed to enter the chamber, face the basilisk, and destroy the diary Horcrux with the basilisk's own fang. This event marked the definitive end of the Chamber of Secrets threat and proved that not all Parselmouths followed Slytherin's dark path. Slytherin house values very specific characteristics in its members. Ambition is perhaps the most prominent of these qualities. Slytherins aren't afraid to dream big and do whatever is necessary to achieve their goals. They are naturally determined and focused, with impressive clarity about what they want from life. Cunning and cleverness are also fundamental. Slytherins tend to be natural strategists, capable of seeing several steps ahead and finding creative solutions to complex problems. They understand that the path to success isn't always straightforward and are willing to use unconventional methods to achieve their ends. Resourcefulness is another striking characteristic. Slytherins are excellent at finding loopholes, opportunities, and alternative paths that others might not perceive. The sorting hat, that ancient magical object that decides which house each student should enter, takes these characteristics into consideration when making its choices. But there's something fascinating about how the hat works. It also considers the student's own desires. Harry Potter is the most famous example of this. When the hat was placed on his head, it seriously considered placing him in Slytherin, recognizing that Harry possessed many of the qualities the house values. The hat even said that Harry could be great in Slytherin, that the house would help him on the path to greatness. But Harry, influenced by Hagrid's warnings about dark wizards coming from Slytherin and by the unpleasant encounter with Draco Malfoy, begged not to go to that house. The hat respected his wish and placed him in Gryffindor. This shows us that having Slytherin qualities doesn't necessarily mean you'll be placed there, and that our choices matter as much as our innate characteristics. Slytherin's common room is one of the most atmospheric places in all of Hogwarts. Located in the castle's dungeons beneath the Black Lake, the environment is unique and striking. To get there, students need to descend several cold and damp stone stairs, entering the castle's depths where sunlight never reaches. The entrance to the common room is hidden in a damp stone wall and can only be accessed through a password that changes regularly. Upon entering, students find themselves in a long, partially underground hall with a low ceiling and rough stone walls. The environment is illuminated by a mysterious greenish light that comes from lamps hanging from the ceiling by chains, and, more impressively, by light filtering through the Black Lake's waters through submerged windows. These windows offer an absolutely unique view in all of Hogwarts. Slytherin students can see the lake's dark waters, and occasionally aquatic creatures swim before the windows, creating moving shadows and adding to the mysterious environment. Sometimes it's possible to see the giant squid that lives in the lake glide gracefully through the waters. The hall is decorated with dark wood furniture and green leather, with medieval tapestries on the walls showing the house's history and its most illustrious members. There are comfortable sofas around an elaborately carved fireplace where students gather to study, chat, or simply relax. The environment may seem somber and even intimidating to visitors, but for Slytherins, it's a welcoming and exclusive refuge, a place where they can be themselves, away from the judgment of other houses. Slytherin's dormitories follow the same theme. They are circular chambers carved into stone, with four-poster beds with green silk covers and silver canopies. The walls are decorated with tapestries showing medieval scenes, and the windows, when they exist, also look out onto the lake's waters. The environment is deliberately kept cold and damp, which some people find uncomfortable, but Slytherins get used to it. and many even appreciate it. There's an atmosphere of exclusivity and secrecy in the dormitories, a feeling of being in a private club where only the chosen can enter. The silver and green decoration is everywhere, constantly reminding students of their heritage and identity. The relationship between Slytherin and the other houses is complex and frequently tense. Historically, the most intense rivalry is with Gryffindor, reflecting the original conflict between Salazar and Godric Gryffindor. The two houses represent in many ways opposing philosophies. While Gryffindor values courage, daring, and direct action, Slytherin prefers cunning, careful planning, and strategy. This creates a natural clash of personalities and approaches. In Quidditch, the matches between Slytherin and Gryffindor are always the most heated and exciting, frequently marked by aggressive plays and fierce rivalry on and off the field. During Harry Potter's time at Hogwarts, this rivalry was at its peak, with constant confrontations between students from the two houses. Slytherin also has a complicated relationship with Hufflepuff. Although it's not as intense a rivalry as with Gryffindor, there's a fundamental difference in values. Hufflepuff prizes loyalty, hard work, and fairness, while Slytherin is more focused on individual ambition and the end justifying the means. These differences can create misunderstandings and conflicts. With Ravenclaw, the relationship tends to be more neutral, though there's occasionally intellectual competition. Ravenclaws value intelligence and knowledge for knowledge's sake, while Slytherins see knowledge as a tool to achieve power and success. These different perspectives can lead to mutual respect or contempt, depending on the individuals involved. It's important to note that much of the tension between Slytherin and the other houses comes from prejudice and stereotypes. For many years, especially in the decades leading to the Second Wizarding War, Slytherin developed a very negative reputation. The house became known as the breeding ground for dark wizards, and this reputation wasn't completely unjustified. Many Death Eaters, Voldemort's followers, were former Slytherin students. This created a vicious cycle where the house was viewed with suspicion and fear, which in turn made Slytherin students feel isolated and rejected, some eventually embracing the dark role attributed to them. When Tom Riddle arrived at Hogwarts in 1938, he was already different. He had discovered his magical powers alone and used them to manipulate, frighten, and control other children at the orphanage. The Sorting Hat barely touched his head before shouting, "Slytherin." During his years at Hogwarts, Riddle was a model student on the surface. Charismatic, extremely intelligent and respectful to teachers, he was an exemplary student, head boy, beloved by teachers, with the exception of Dumbledore, who saw through his facade. But behind this mask of normalcy, Riddle was obsessed with his heritage, with pure blood, and mainly with immortality. He opened the Chamber of Secrets at 16, causing Myrtle's death and nearly causing the school's closure. After leaving Hogwarts, Tom Riddle disappeared for years, traveling and deepening his knowledge of the dark arts. When he returned, he was transformed, physically and spiritually. He had adopted the name Lord Voldemort, an anagram of his true name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, completely rejecting his Muggle heritage. He gathered followers, wizards who shared his views on blood purity and magical supremacy, forming a group that became known as Death Eaters. During the First Wizarding War, from 1970 to 1981, Voldemort and his followers terrorized the British magical community. Entire families were murdered, Muggle-borns were tortured and killed, and even pure-blood wizards who opposed Voldemort weren't safe. It was a dark period where no one trusted anyone, and fear dominated. But it would be unfair and incorrect to define Slytherin only by Voldemort and the Death Eaters. The house produced many notable wizards who didn't follow dark paths. Merop Gaunt, Voldemort's mother, despite questionably using a love potion, was a witch who experienced terrible suffering at the hands of her abusive father and brother. She died trying to give her son a better life. Severus Snape is perhaps the most complex and controversial Slytherin of all. He entered Hogwarts at the same time as the Marauders, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. Snape was of humble origin, with an abusive Muggle father and a witch mother. He was best friends with Lily Evans since before both went to Hogwarts, but when they arrived at school, they were separated. Lily went to Gryffindor and Snape to Slytherin. Over the years, this friendship wore away. Snape became involved with Slytherin students who practiced dark magic and eventually became Death Eaters. James Potter and his friends, particularly James and Sirius, constantly bullied Snape, creating deep bitterness. The breaking point came when Snape, in a moment of anger after being saved from a werewolf by James, called Lily a mudblood, the most offensive insult for Muggleborns. Lily ended their friendship there. Snape became a Death Eater, serving Voldemort during the First Wizarding War. But when he discovered that the prophecy about the boy who could defeat Voldemort referred to Harry Potter, Lily's son, and that Voldemort planned to kill the Potter family, Snape became desperate. He went to Dumbledore and begged him to protect Lily. Dumbledore agreed to try to protect the Potters if Snape became a double agent, informing the Order of the Phoenix about Voldemort's plans. Snape agreed, but it wasn't enough. Voldemort attacked the Potters, and Lily died protecting Harry. Snape was devastated. Dumbledore revealed that Lily had given her life for Harry, creating powerful protection, and asked Snape to help protect Lily's son. Snape agreed, but made it clear he was doing it for Lily, not for James or Harry. For the next 17 years, until his death, Snape lived an extraordinarily dangerous double life. He was a potions professor at Hogwarts, and later defense against the dark arts professor, but also Dumbledore's spy, infiltrated among the Death Eaters. When Voldemort returned, Snape had to convince him that he had remained loyal during all those years, an incredibly difficult task against a master legilimens. Snape succeeded through his own exceptional skill in occlumency, the art of protecting the mind against magical invasion. He passed crucial information to Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix while maintaining his cover. Knowing that a single mistake would mean torture and death, he even killed Dumbledore when requested, fulfilling a plan they had developed together to spare Draco Malfoy from having to do it, and so Snape could maintain Voldemort's trust. Harry Potter spent 6 years hating Snape, believing he was a loyal Death Eater who had betrayed Dumbledore. Snape, in turn, treated Harry with disdain and cruelty, seeing in him the son of James Potter, the man he hated. But Snape also secretly protected Harry, intervening at critical moments. On the night of Dumbledore's death, Snape fled from Hogwarts and became the most wanted wizard by the Order of the Phoenix, seen as a traitor by everyone. When Voldemort took over Hogwarts, Snape became headmaster, but used his position to protect students as much as possible from the Carrow's cruelties. In the end, Voldemort killed Snape, erroneously believing this would give him full control of the Elder Wand. In his last moments of life, Snape gave his memories to Harry, revealing the entire truth about his life, his sacrifices, and his eternal love for Lily Potter. These memories completely transformed Harry's understanding of Snape. He saw the lonely boy who was rejected and bullied, the young man who made terrible choices but found redemption, the man who loved so deeply that he dedicated his entire life to protecting the son of the woman he loved, even suffering daily seeing in him the face of the rival he hated. Harry named his second son Albus Severus Potter in honor of 2 Hogwarts headmasters, and told his son that Severus Snape was the bravest man he ever knew. Snape's story shows that Slytherin isn't just about dark wizards, but also about complex people capable of love, sacrifice, and courage, even if they express these qualities in ways different from other houses. Draco Malfoy is another Slytherin whose narrative arc defies simple stereotypes. He came from one of the oldest and richest pure-blood families in Britain. His father, Lucius Malfoy, was a Death Eater who escaped Azkaban after Voldemort's first fall by claiming to have been controlled by the Imperious Curse. Draco was raised with beliefs about blood purity and wizard superiority over muggles. When he arrived at Hogwarts, he tried to befriend Harry Potter, but was rejected after insulting Ron Weasley. This established a rivalry that would last years. Draco was the spoiled, arrogant, and cruel boy. He was constantly protected and favored by Snape, and used his family's wealth and influence to get what he wanted. But in Draco's 6th year, everything changed. Voldemort gave him a mission. Draco had to assassinate Dumbledore. It was a mission Voldemort didn't expect him to complete, but that would cause suffering to the Malfoy family either way. Draco spent the year trying to fulfill the task, becoming increasingly desperate, frightened, and isolated. He fixed a vanishing cabinet to allow Death Eaters into Hogwarts, but when he finally confronted Dumbledore in the Astronomy Tower, his wand in hand, Draco couldn't kill him. He wasn't a murderer. Snape had to do it in his place. This moment defined Draco. He had been raised believing certain things, but when confronted with the brutal reality of serving Voldemort, he discovered he didn't have the stomach for it. During the final year, when Voldemort controlled Hogwarts and the Malfoys lived in constant terror with Death Eaters residing in their mansion, Draco became increasingly disillusioned. At Malfoy Manor, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione were captured, Draco was called to identify them. He clearly recognized them but hesitated, not confirming their identities with certainty. This hesitation was crucial in allowing them to escape. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Draco didn't fight alongside Voldemort. Harry even saved his life twice during the battle. After the war, Draco married Astoria Greengrass, a witch who also rejected the old blood purity beliefs of her family. Together, they raised their son Scorpius with very different values from those Draco was raised with, teaching him tolerance and kindness. Draco showed that it's possible to grow beyond the prejudices we're taught as children. The Malfoy family as a whole had an interesting arc. Lucius Malfoy was a man who valued power, influence, and status. He was a committed Death Eater during the First Wizarding War, but after Voldemort's fall, used his wealth and connections to avoid prison. For years, he maintained public respectability, while secretly keeping dark objects and waiting for Voldemort's return. When Voldemort returned, Lucius expected to be rewarded for his loyalty, but Voldemort was a cruel master who didn't value his servants beyond their usefulness. When Lucius failed to retrieve the prophecy, he fell from grace. Narcissa Malfoy, Lucius's wife and Draco's mother, was from the Black family, raised with the same blood purity values. But when it came to choosing between Voldemort and her son, she chose Draco. In the Forbidden Forest, when Voldemort sent Narcissa to check if Harry was dead, she quietly asked Harry if Draco was alive in the castle. Harry said yes. Narcissa then lied to Voldemort, saying Harry was dead. This lie was crucial to Voldemort's final defeat. Narcissa chose maternal love over loyalty to a cruel master, showing that even those raised in families with dark beliefs are capable of making brave choices when it truly matters. The Black family is fascinating when considering how different members of the same Slytherin lineage chose radically different paths. The Black family was obsessed with blood purity and tradition. They had a famous genealogical tapestry showing all generations of the family, and burned the names of those who dishonored the family by marrying Muggleborns or Muggles. Sirius Black, though raised in this family, completely rejected their values and went to Gryffindor, becoming the first Black in generations not to go to Slytherin. He ran away from home at 16 and was disowned. His brother Regulus, on the other hand, was the perfect son, going to Slytherin and even becoming a Death Eater. But Regulus discovered the truth about Voldemort's Horcruxes and was horrified. He chose to betray Voldemort, stealing a Horcrux locket and leaving a substitute with a note signed with his initials. Regulus knew this betrayal would cost his life, and it did. He ordered his house elf creature to destroy the original Horcrux locket and was killed. Regulus Black, a Slytherin, gave his life to weaken Voldemort, an act of courage that wasn't recognized until years later. Bellatrix Lestrange, born Bellatrix Black, was perhaps the most fanatical of the Death Eaters. She idolized Voldemort with a devotion that bordered on madness. Bellatrix was cruel, sadistic, and extremely skilled in the dark arts. She tortured Frank and Alice Longbottom using the Cruciatus Curse until they permanently lost their sanity, a crime for which she was sent to Azkaban. After escaping prison with other Death Eaters, she actively participated in the Second Wizarding War. Bellatrix killed Sirius Black, her own cousin, during the battle at the Department of Mysteries. She also killed Dobby the House Elf when he helped Harry escape from Malfoy Manor, and killed her niece Nymphadora Tonks during the Battle of Hogwarts. Bellatrix represents the worst that Slytherin can produce, when ambition transforms into thirst for power, when cunning becomes cruel manipulation, and when lineage pride transforms into genocidal hatred. She was finally killed by Molly Weasley, proving that love and protection of loved ones can overcome even the most powerful dark magic. Slytherin's colors, green and silver, have significance and history. Green is traditionally associated with ambition, growth, and in some contexts with envy and danger. In Slytherin's context, it represents the healthy ambition to grow and achieve great things. Silver perfectly complements green, representing sophistication, class, and worth. Together, these colors create a palette that is both elegant and slightly threatening, which fits perfectly with the house's reputation. The house symbol is the serpent, an animal that Salazar Slytherin could converse with thanks to his ability to speak Parseltongue. Serpents are often seen as dangerous, but they're also symbols of wisdom, renewal through shedding skin, and cunning. In many ancient cultures, serpents were revered, not feared. Slytherin's choice reflects both the respect and misunderstanding that serpents inspire. Slytherin's unofficial motto, though never explicitly stated in the books, is frequently cited as related to doing whatever is necessary to achieve goals, using any means necessary. This can sound sinister, but it can also be interpreted positively. It means being pragmatic, not letting unrealistic idealism prevent success, and having the courage to make difficult choices. The problem arises when this pragmatism transforms into lack of moral principles, when any means becomes acceptable, including cruelty, betrayal, and murder. The line between healthy ambition and destructive ambition is thin, and many Slytherins throughout history have crossed that line. Slytherin's Quidditch team has a long and complex history. They have a reputation for playing aggressively and sometimes dirty. During Harry's years at Hogwarts, Slytherin's team was known for questionable tactics and players who didn't hesitate to use violence to gain advantage. Draco Malfoy was the Seeker, a position he got when his father donated state-of-the-art Nimbus 2001 brooms to the entire team. Marcus Flint was captain during Harry's first years, known for his brutality on the field. There's a memorable scene where the entire Slytherin team blocks Harry, preventing him from catching the golden snitch, a tactic completely against the rules but that the referee didn't see. Another infamous moment was when Lucian Bowl deliberately hit Angelina Johnson with a bludger out of play. Slytherin's team represents the philosophy that winning is everything, regardless of how victory is achieved. But it would be unfair to say the entire team was composed of cheaters. Some players were simply competitive and skilled. Quidditch is a violent sport by nature, and the line between aggressive play and dirty play isn't always clear. What's undeniable is that matches between Slytherin and Gryffindor were always the most exciting and tense of the school year. The rivalry between the houses manifested intensely on the Quidditch field, with crowds shouting, players confronting each other aggressively, and palpable tension in the air. These matches weren't just about sport, they were about house pride, about proving superiority, and about old rivalries being played out again. Regardless of who won, these matches created lasting memories and intensified feelings of belonging and house identity. Slytherin househeads over the years include some notable characters. During most of Harry Potter's era at Hogwarts, Severus Snape was head of Slytherin, as well as potions professor and later defense against the dark arts professor. Snape was notoriously biased toward his own house, favoring Slytherin students and frequently ignoring their transgressions, while harshly punishing students from other houses, especially Gryffindors. He unfairly took points from Gryffindor for minimal or invented reasons, while generously giving points to Slytherin. This bias created significant resentment among the other houses and contributed to Slytherin's negative reputation. When Snape became headmaster of the school in the 7th year briefly, Alecto Carrow took on some functions related to Slytherin, though her main focus was teaching Muggle studies from a distorted and cruel perspective. Before Snape, Horace Slughorn had been head of Slytherin for many years. Slughorn was a very different figure from Snape. He was jovial, enjoyed luxury and comfort, and had the habit of collecting talented students for his slug club, regardless of their house. While Slughorn had clear affection for his own house, he wasn't as openly biased as Snape. He genuinely appreciated talent and potential wherever he found them. Slughorn had taught Tom Riddle and was manipulated by him into revealing information about Horcruxes, something that tormented him for the rest of his life. When convinced by Dumbledore to return to Hogwarts after Snape's death, Slughorn had to confront his past and eventually provided Harry with the crucial memory about Voldemort and Horcruxes. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Slughorn proved his courage by fighting alongside the school's defenders, even dueling directly against Voldemort alongside McGonagall and Shacklebolt. He represented what a Slytherin could be. Ambitious but not malicious, cunning but not cruel, proud of his house but not blind to others' talents. The tradition of academic excellence in Slytherin is often overshadowed by the house's reputation in other areas, but many Slytherins were exceptional students. Tom Riddle was possibly the most brilliant student Hogwarts ever saw, mastering complex magic while still young and exploring areas of magic that others wouldn't dare. He won the award for special services to the school when he blamed Hagrid for Myrtle's death, hiding his own guilt. Draco Malfoy, despite his character flaws, was a competent student. Slytherin produced many prefects and head boys and girls over the years, demonstrating that its students were capable of leadership and academic responsibility. However, there's also a culture within Slytherin that sometimes values cunning over academic honesty. This can manifest in students collaborating in ways not permitted, using creative cheating on exams, or manipulating situations to gain advantage. This approach can work in the short term, but teaches questionable lessons about integrity. Not all Slytherins engage in these practices, but the reputation exists for some reason. The house seems to have an attitude that if you can get away with something without being caught, then it's acceptable. This philosophy extends beyond academic studies to general behavior, creating a culture that can be toxic when unchecked. A frequently forgotten aspect of Slytherin is that many of its members are, in fact, just normal teenagers trying to navigate the challenges of growing up. Not all Slytherins are future Death Eaters or even particularly interested in blood purity politics. Some are there simply because the Sorting Hat saw ambition in them, or cunning, or perhaps just because they come from traditionally Slytherin families. They worry about the same things as other teenagers: friendships, relationships, parental approval, finding their place in the world. The problem is that during Voldemort's era, especially during his return and subsequent takeover of power, being in Slytherin became dangerous in complex ways. Slytherin students whose parents were Death Eaters faced immense pressure to follow the same path. Some, like Draco, were forced to participate in activities they didn't want to be part of. Others may have felt obligated by family loyalty or fear of repercussions. At the same time, Slytherin students who didn't support Voldemort were viewed with suspicion by other houses, their guilt presumed by association. Imagine being a young 14 or 15-year-old placed in Slytherin, for having ambition or cunning, and suddenly discovering that all other students assume you're a potential dark wizard. It would be isolating, unfair, and could even push some young people toward the darker elements of the house for having no other options for belonging. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Slytherin's situation was particularly complicated. When the battle was about to begin, and McGonagall gave students the option to stay and fight or evacuate, Pansy Parkinson suggested they hand Harry over to Voldemort. It was a shameful moment for the house, and McGonagall responded by ordering all of Slytherin to be evacuated first. This meant that no Slytherin students participated in Hogwarts' initial defense. They were escorted out of the castle through the Room of Requirement to safety, presumably with the younger group. However, some older Slytherins returned to fight. Slughorn returned and brought reinforcements from Hogsmeade, including Slytherin members. This shows that even in a house with such a tarnished reputation, there were those willing to stand on the right side of history when it mattered most. Slytherin's reform after the war was crucial to the magical community's healing. The house needed to be redefined, separated from its association with Voldemort and the Death Eaters. This wasn't easy. Generations of prejudice and fear don't disappear overnight. Horace Slughorn, who remained as head of Slytherin after the war, had an important role in this transformation. He worked to change the house's culture from within, emphasizing that ambition doesn't mean cruelty, that cunning doesn't require dishonesty, and that lineage pride shouldn't transform into prejudice. He encouraged Slytherin students to collaborate with other houses, to demonstrate they could be trustworthy and honorable. Slowly, the house began to rebuild its reputation. The students who came to Hogwarts after the war, placed in Slytherin, represented a new generation. They hadn't lived under Voldemort's shadow, hadn't been exposed to the same propaganda and pressure. For them, Slytherin was just one of 4 houses with rich history including dark and bright aspects. Albus Potter, Harry's son, expressed fear of being placed in Slytherin when he was going to Hogwarts for the first time. Harry told him that one of the bravest people he knew was from Slytherin, and that if Albus went there, the house would gain an excellent student. Eventually, according to the play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Albus went to Gryffindor, but his best friend, Scorpius Malfoy, went to Slytherin, and they remained close despite being in different houses, something that would have been almost impossible in the previous generation.